Hi everyone, hope you all are good. We are here for grade 10 math. You can find all the lessons on aplusstudents.com. You have to log in there using your email address and password is provided by the administrator. Then you have to select math from the subject tab. Scroll down to grade 10 math and then click on view all lessons. There you can find a list of the chapters. We're going to start with the chapter probability, and the lessons we're going to cover today are theoretical and experimental probability, compound events find the number of outcomes, independent and dependent events, counting principle. So please make sure you have your notebook and pencil so that you can note down the important examples and definitions as well. Okay, here I am on grade 10 math. Let's just start with the chapter probability. So I'm here on the first lesson, theoretical and experimental probability. So let's just start with the lesson. Okay, so let's just start with the first example. Just listen to me carefully, right? Okay, you pick a card at random. You are given the cards, they are 5, 6, and 7. What is the probability not factor of 35? You need to find a probability of not a factor of 35, right? So we have three cards here, they are 5, 6, and 7. Now the factors of 35 are 5 and 7, right? So first calculate the probability of factors of 35, right? So out of the three, two of them are the factors of 35. So then probability of factor of 35 is 2 out of 3. That is 2 by 3. You need to calculate the probability not factor of 35, so you need to subtract it from the 1. 1 minus the probability of factor of 35, right? So 1 minus 2 by 3 is 1 over 3. That means the probability of not factor of 35 is 1 by 3. Okay, so let's just start with the test questions. Okay, so let me just read the question carefully. May supplies costumes to a number of theater companies. She recently provided 14 different hats, including 7 mortar boards. What is the experimental probability that the next that requested by May's inventory will be a mortar board? So, which is the correct option? Okay, so the probability that the next hat requested for May's inventory will be a mortar board. So, you need to calculate the probability of the motor board. So the total hat they provided are 14, right? Out of 14, 7 of them are motor board, right? So just when you simplify, that is 1 over 2. That means the probability of motor board is 1 over 2. Option number 1 is the correct option. The correct option is 1 by 2. Option number 1 is the correct option. You spin the spinner once. What is the probability of prime? You have to calculate the probability of prime, right? So the only prime number here is you have two of the prime numbers here, 5 and 7. So that means 2 out of 4 are prime. You need to calculate the percentage. So divide them and multiply them by 100. So that is 50%. So probability of prime is 50%. Option number 1 is the correct option. So the correct option is 50%. Option number 1 is the correct option. Mitch's mother recorded how many donuts he has eaten over the past few months. What is the experimental probability that the next donut Mitch eats will be a glazed donut? Okay, so the total donuts are 18 and the glazed donuts were only 2. So that is 2 out of 18, right? So the correct option is 1 by 9. The probability of the glazed donut is 1 by 9. Option number 1 is the correct option. That is 1 by 9. Option number 1 is the correct option. The table shows the enrollment in a university so far, broken down by student type. What is the experimental probability that the next student to be enrolled will be a graduate student? So, which is the correct option? One by three is the correct option. Okay, you can complete the lesson by yourself later today. Let me just move on to next lesson. The next lesson is compound events find the number of outcomes. Let's just start with the lesson. Compound event means you have more than one event, right? So we have two events. One of them is the marble and the second one is the spinner. So together they make a compound event, right? So compound event means more than one event, right? Okay, so let me just read the question. You pick a marble and spin the spinner. How many outcomes are possible? So you have four marbles, right? And two outcomes for the spinner. You need to calculate the total possible outcomes. So how do you calculate? You need to just multiply them. That would be 4 times 2. The total outcomes are 8. So you have total 8 possible outcomes you can see here. When you have the brown marble, you still have two outcomes for the spinner because spinner has two portions. When you have the pink marble, you still have two outcomes. When you have the blue marbles, you still have two outcomes. When you have orange marble, you have still two outcomes. So the total outcomes you have is 4 times 2. The correct option is 8. So that means when we're working on the compound events, you can calculate the possible outcome by multiplying the outcomes of each event, right? Let's just start with the test questions. You pick a card and roll a die. You pick a card and roll a die. How many outcomes are possible? You need to calculate the total outcomes, right? So you have 5 cards. So the outcomes for the cards are 5, right? And for the dice, the total outcomes are 6. So the outcomes of the compound event is 5 times 6, 38 is. So that means the total outcomes are 30. So the correct option is 30. Option number 2 is the correct option. You spin the spinner and pick a marble. How many outcomes are possible? So which is the correct option? You have 3 outcomes for the spinner and 6 outcomes for the marble. So the correct option is 18. The correct option is option number 2. The total outcomes are 18 in this case, right? The next one is you flip a coin and roll a die. How many outcomes are possible? So, which is the correct option? The correct option is you have 2 outcomes for the coins and 6 outcomes for the die. So, the total outcomes are the correct option is 12. Option number 2 is the correct option, right? You pick a card and flip a coin. How many outcomes are possible? So, which is the correct option? The correct option is you have 5 outcomes for the card and 2 outcomes for the coin. So, together you have 10 outcomes for the compound event, right? Option number 1 is the correct option. Okay, the next one is you pick a marble and spin the spinner. How many outcomes are possible? Which is the correct option? The correct option is you have four outcomes for the marble and two outcomes for the spinner, right? So you need to multiply both the outcomes for both the event to calculate the total outcomes. 4 times 2 makes 8. So the correct option is 8. Okay, you can complete the lesson by yourself later today. Let me just move on to next lesson. The next lesson is independent and dependent events. Let's just start with the lesson. Let's see what are the dependent and independent events. Okay, May picks a card at random without putting the first card back. She picks a second card at random. Are these two events dependent or independent? So let's just understand dependent and independent events, right? Dependent events are the one if the outcomes of the first event affects the outcomes of the second event, then they are the dependent events, right? But if the outcomes of the first event does not affect the outcomes of the second event, then they are the independent event. Just look at this example. May picks a card at random. When he is going to pick the card for the first time, he have one, two, three, four, and 5 options, right? Without putting the first card back. For example, he picked this card, right? He didn't put the card back. She is going to pick the card at second time. Now he have only 4 cards, right? So the outcome of the first event affected the outcome of the second event. If for the both events, first event and the second event, the outcomes are same, then they are the independent events. But if the outcomes for the first event and the second event are different, then they are the dependent events. So they are the dependent events. For the first event, he have 5 cards. But for the second event, he have only 4 cards. So that is the dependent event. Got it? Let's just start with the test questions. Isaac picks a marble at random. You Isaac picks a card at random. Pick a marble at random. Without putting the first marble back, he picks a second marble at random. Are these two events dependent or independent? So for the first event, he have one, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 marbles, right? That is for the first event. But he didn't put the first marble back. For the second event, he have 8 marbles, right? That means the events are dependent because for the both events he have different outcomes. So the correct option is dependent events. Option number 2 is the correct option. They are the dependent events. Abe buys a sculpture at an art featuring one of a kind art. A few minutes later, Becky comes to the same art show and buy a sculpture too. Are these two events dependent or independent? Which is the correct option? So that is a one of a kind art, right? So that they are the independent events. Dependent events they are because the sculpture Ape picks is not available for the Becky to pick, right? So if Abe comes first, he have five sculptures. One of one he sell one sculpture Abe buys, but for the Becky you have now he have now four sculptures, right? So they are the dependent events. Marshall pulls a coin out of his pocket and places it on the table. Then he reach back to his pocket and take out a second coin. Are these two events dependent or independent? So which is the correct option? The correct option is dependent events, right? The correct option is dependent. Students in a fifth grade class are writing reports on a famous inventors. Each student may choose one inventor from a list. The teacher does not want any repeats. Leon chooses first. Alice followed by the Alice. So which is the correct option? The correct option is they are the dependent events, right? Because no one can choose the same lesson, same topic. Robbie and Alexa get massages from the same person. On Monday, Robbie calls and pick one of the available appointment times. On Tuesday, Alexa calls and pick one of the remaining appointments. Are these two events dependent or independent? The correct option is they are the dependent events. Okay, you can complete the lesson by yourself later today. The next lesson is counting principle. Let's just start with the lesson. Let's just start with the first example. Gary is at the car accessories shop deciding how to customize a new car. The store has six different sets of custom hubcaps and two custom hood ornaments. There are two kinds of speakers available in the shop. How many different ways can Gray customize a vehicle? So, which is the correct option? The correct option is he have six sets for the custom hubcaps and two for the ornaments and two kinds of speakers. So you have to multiply all these options 6 times 2 times 2. So that means he have 24 different ways. Let's just start with the test questions. Nancy is knitting a sweater from the yarn. She has from two colors and five weights. How many different sweaters can Nancy knit? You have to do 2 times 5, right? So 2 times 5 is the correct option is 10. Option number 2 is the correct option. A doctor wants to subscribe to some magazine so that her patients have something to read in the waiting room. He wants to subscribe one of two new magazines and one of five fashion magazines. She also wants to subscribe for one of the seven business magazines. How many different combinations of magazines can the doctor order? So, which is the correct option? The correct option is 2 times 5 is 10 and 10 times 7 is 70. The correct option is 70. Option number 2 is the correct option. Nick is ordering breakfast in a restaurant. There are 9 types of eggs and 5 types of toast to choose from. How many different breakfast can Nick order? So which is the correct option? Correct option is 45. Option number 1 is the correct option. Veera is planning a day out for grandmother's birthday. They are going to have lunch one of her grandma's two favorite restaurant, and then they will go shopping at one of her grandmother's four favorite stores. Next they will go see a movie, and there are four movies but that she thinks her grandmother might like. Assuming the order of the activities doesn't matter, how many different ways can Veera plan her grandmother's birthday outing? Which is the correct option? The correct option is 2 for the restaurant, then 4 options for the store. 2 times 4 is 8 and 8 times 4 is 32. So the correct option is 32. Option number 2 is the correct option. Okay, you can complete the lesson by yourself later today. So we were working on grade 10 math. The chapter we were working on is probability, and the lessons we heard today are theoretical and experimental probability, compound events, find the number of outcomes, independent and independent events, and then counting principle. Please make sure before the next session you can complete all the practice questions for the lessons we just did. That is your homework until next session, right? So if you need more help with any of the lesson, you can simply click on the live chat button. Tutors are available there to help you, or either you can write a question in the chat box. I'm here to answer all your questions and confusions if you need more help, right? So you can please ask a question if you need more help with the lesson we have just finished. No questions? Okay, then that's all for today. See you in the next session. Bye, everyone.